Okay, so today's is going to be basically on one line out of this book called The History of History, which is a debut novel by an American writer called Ida Hattemer-Higgins, which is basically, essentially, it's about two mothers in wartime Germany. One who was a Jewish mother who was trying to sort of save her kids from the extermination camps, and the other is Goering's wife. Is it Goering or Goebbels? I can't even remember now. But anyway, one of the Nazis who she basically gave all her kids cyanide to prevent them falling into the hands of the Russians as they prepared to storm Hitler's bunker, where the Goerings were, or the Goebbels. Um, it's it's an interesting book. It's flawed, but there's enough in it, I think, to make it worthwhile. Um, but there's one idea in it which really sort of caught my imagination, and I ran and ran with, and seems to me to sum up a lot of sort of fictions, questions about fiction today. And she asked the question in the book: what is the difference between a knife being thrown at a door and writing about a knife being thrown at a door? Now, I've never thrown a knife at a door, but I'm assuming the time it takes from leaving your hand to hit the door, depending how far away from the door you are, is a second or a second and a half or whatever it is. And it's that sort of bang, it's that action. Whereas writing about it would not be 1.5 seconds, because the writer could not help themselves putting metaphors in trying to describe that action of throwing the knife going through the air and landing in the door. So there might be a metaphor about how it flies through the air. Is it wobbling? Is it sheening, off its metal? Is it moving like a butterfly? And how when it hits the door and it's like sort of reverberating like that, there'll be some, is that like a butterfly? Sorry for the lack of imagination, but it would probably have 2 or 3 sentences dedicated to it. Whereas the swiftness of the act of throwing a knife and the violence of it cutting through the air, works completely against writing about it, which is, taking its own sweet time to describe, trying to get to grips with that one physical action. And I think that sets up a very interesting sort of tension in writing. That goes back to the whole notion of realism and fiction. If fiction is trying to portray the real world and its only tool is language, because that's all writers have, you're on a hiding to nothing, because time is a really important function in literature. But as we've said, from throwing a knife, the time of that is quick. Too quick for the eye, maybe. If you're trying to watch the knife, you may catch it at one point in its flight, but to sort of follow it, unless you hit its particular sort of speed that it's going through. But fiction, in trying to define all the dimensions of that act of the knife moving through air, would just take so much longer. And it would be, it would make it interesting and sort of paint a picture for the reader. But it's false, because it didn't take that amount of time, and the knife didn't move metaphorically. Trying to present it to the reader, we use metaphor, we employ metaphor, because that gives us more chance of understanding. But the knife isn't moving metaphorically. Language is a human tool, and a knife is a human tool, but the knife is not imparted with language. The observation of the knife moving is done through language, and these are really, I think, these are really important questions for writers who are sort of obsessed with, how can fiction relate to the real world. I'm not a realist writer myself, so I'm not trying to reproduce the reality of the world directly on a one-to-one translation. I avowedly approach it through metaphor, trying to throw the light on the metaphors within our reality. Things that we take for reality, I think, are largely constructions of symbol, of meaning. They have no actual objective material reality themselves. They're just how we construct them. And language is very much a layer of that, because we name everything. I'm sitting on a chair and this is a painting or a print of a painting behind me. You know, that's language's function. Um, I think this book is not profound enough to deal with it, but it raises the question, which I think is a really important question. I don't think it gets anywhere near answering it. I'm not even sure if it's trying to answer it. Um, but for me, that one question made this whole book, really worthwhile. Do I recommend it? I don't know. I'm actually, this came out quite a few years ago. I've been waiting for a follow up because I was intrigued to see what her follow up would be. And as far as I know, there hasn't been one yet. So my jury is still out on her work. But there you go. Ida Hattemer-Higgins, The History of History. If you're interested in sort of that period of right at the end of the war and, life in the bunker and stuff, there's enough in the book on those themes that would keep you, I think, engaged. But I got sidetracked by that one question about the knife in the door. Okay, thanks a lot.